Great. So I think we'll go ahead and get started. And Dr. Leslie will keep an eye on the waiting room as we go ahead. I'm Lauren Cook. I'm your Dean of College and Gap Year Advising at JCHS. We are also joined with Roselle and Leslie this evening, who is helping me with an assorted amount of college advising things, including managing the waiting room this evening. She is the chair of our humanities department and also teaches our AP literature class, which some of your kids may be in next year. And so she ends up being their point person for some of the writing elements of the application process at this stage. So we are a college advising team here. And I'm going to just start with a little bit of housekeeping. My default in my room is to be on mute. So please stay on mute for now. I've got a bit of content for you all up top as we go through some frequently asked questions about the process. And then I will just open the floor up for questions for the remainder of the time. And we can do that live if you want to raise your Zoom hand, or you can pop stuff in the chat. I'll be monitoring both. But for now, please just stay on mute. And as I said earlier, it's great to see faces if you want to have your camera on. I also understand with the awkward time of night, if you need your camera off, that's fine too. So I'm happy to talk to your pictures and names as well as your faces. And I do want to just note that the process won't start formally for you all until December 4th, which is our official sort of college kickoff for the junior class. We do it just after Thanksgiving each year. But I found that this kind of quick touch base in the fall can be helpful for everyone. For the random emails you might be sending to me. Hopefully I can address en masse some of your questions tonight. And for you to feel like you have a sense of the direction that we're heading in. But this is very much a soft launch, which is purposeful. And I'm really glad that you're here tonight. Know that we are also recording. And so I will send this off to people as soon as Mr. McDonald's able to get it up onto YouTube. So if you do need to exit at some point before 7:30, that's fine. Know that the recording will be sent to everyone, regardless of whether you're in attendance or not later in the week. And then finally, that we will have a hard stop of 7:30. And you may still have questions, and that's okay. This is obviously the beginning of a long conversation for all of us. So a couple of things I'm going to just cover up top here before I open it up for questions. A little bit about the JCHS process. College visits are starting soon. College is coming to JCHS. A little bit about testing. I think that's the most frequent question folks have now. Should you be doing something with the ACT or SAT? And then a bit on events that will be coming up in the next 2 or 3 months or so, so you have a sense of how we're sort of sliding into the process. So to start, we take the same approach in terms of the timeline as other independent schools in the Bay Area, in that we have kind of a gentle start, let all of you juniors get kind of started with your junior year and not sort of hit you full throttle with the college search. And as I said a moment ago, this is the start of a long-term project. So we've really got a 2-year time span here to help you think about your options post JCHS. And that's really what our goal is here. I want you to be reflecting on yourself, on your time in high school, start envisioning the next phase of your life, and just name that that phase could take a lot of different formats. We have students that are headed off to community college with the intention to transfer to a 4-year institution later on. We've got folks that are enlisting in the IDF. We've got folks planning on gap years, but the majority of each class is headed off to a 4-year college, and that takes the most planning and is kind of the most complicated of all of those steps to prepare for. So that's why this evening and in some subsequent college advising things, that's going to be my main focus. But know that all of these pathways are valid and utilized by our students. So if you have questions about things beyond the 4-year colleges, please let me know. So you all are now on SCORE, which is our college advising software. You can do a little bit of noodling around on there. There's nothing you have to do in the next few months, but for some students, you might want to start following some colleges, doing a little research. You also have the option to go to college visits at JCHS, which I'll talk more about in a second, as a way to explore. December 4th will be our official kickoff launch. And at that time, I'll be meeting with every single junior in the class. Everybody's going to get asked to do some questionnaires. I'm going to try and scale up and get to know you as fast as possible once we hit early December. But for now, I'm going to ask that you hold off on one-on-one appointments with me during like September and October, as I've really got to get the seniors launched. They are at the moment of getting ready to submit their first round of applications, which will generally happen on November 1st. So they need my full attention, which you will very much appreciate next year at this time when you're in their shoes. But I do welcome you to drop by my office, say hello, introduce yourself if we haven't had a chance to really interact yet. And I'll see you in some of those college visits to the school as well. So to talk about those, college visits start after Labor Day, and they are open to juniors and seniors to come to. They are typically in room 120, which is that nice little room you might have had to feel it in right off the lobby, the main doors to the school. They're 30-minute appointments, and they typically will be the first 30 minutes of a class block or the last 30 minutes. If you have study hall, great. Come to as many college visits during study hall as you want. You don't need to ask anyone's permission. But if you are going to miss class for a college visit, you need to ask your faculty member about that 24 hours in advance. And I'm pretty firm about this, and your faculty members will be too. Do not show up to class and say, I forgot to ask you, but I need to go to something right now, I'm leaving, because they probably won't let you. So just do that 24 hours in advance. Faculty encouraged to let you attend visits, and you should still be able to either get the beginning or the end of that class. You should also register for a visit in SCORE. There is a calendar. When you log into SCORE and just scroll down a little bit, you'll see office hours and visits on the right-hand navigation. And there's a full list of, there's about 45 colleges that have booked so far. And I'll expect we'll have another 20 or 30 before all is said and done. Some folks are still figuring out their fall travel plans. But just hit that register button, and that will let me know how many are expected for the visit. Because sometimes, especially like a UC, it can be a very full room. And this is a time to explore. You don't have to know where you want to go. You don't have to know anything about these schools. You do not have to show up with working knowledge of the college. And I'd encourage you to explore. Go to a UC visit, go to a small liberal arts college. Women, check out a women's college. Art students, go to an art school visit. Just see what's out there. This is about shopping. And know that Dr. Lessie or I will always be in the room. So you're not going to be like alone with a rep, and one-on-one and panicked that you need to come up with questions. And typically there'll be a number of seniors in the room as well who do have more specific and strategic questions at this point. So you can just kind of draft on to the conversation from there. I will also just say, it goes without saying that students should be on their best behavior at college visits. These reps are often the folks who are reading the applications from JCHS. So you should be attending with the intent of college business and paying attention and being respectful of our guests. And I have kind of a one strike and you're out policy on this because we can't play around with how reps think about the school. So just know that if you are coming to a visit, you're there to get to work and listen and engage. Okay, I'm going to shift into testing. And this is what I'm getting the most questions about currently. A lot from parents, and so this comment is directed at the parents specifically. A lot has changed with standardized testing in the college admission process since you applied, since I applied, since maybe your older child has applied to college. So this is a very shifting part of the landscape. And just for some framing, the ACT and the SAT, these are the two standardized tests we're talking about for college admission purposes. That landscape was evolving prior to the pandemic, but COVID really accelerated some changes in this part of the process. Before the pandemic, there were like 800 some colleges that had chosen to engage in test optional policies. You could submit scores if you felt like they, reflected, your academic record that was putting your best foot forward. You could leave them out if you wanted to. But with March of 2020 and everything shutting down and it being actually sort of dangerous to go to testing centers, almost every college reverted to a test optional policy. Now, it was, of course, difficult to test during the pandemic, but some schools were already playing with this beforehand because of criticism of and scrutiny around these tests and whether they are an accurate predictive tool for college success. There's been a host of studies done. You can go read on your own, but one of the most sort of problematic is how they're highly correlated to family income. And so ultimately, the UCs and the California state schools moved to being actually totally test-free in 2022, and they remain that way. So for the state of California, there isn't a public school you need a test score to apply. A small handful of schools reverted back to testing pretty quickly. Service academies, some very highly selective schools like Georgetown and MIT. But it really wasn't until this past spring that we saw movement again with testing. And there have been a handful of more highly selective, or you may hear me call them highly rejective schools, went back to requiring testing. This is still very much a small sliver of the college pie, as it were, but for folks who are thinking about Ivy schools or other places with very, very, very small admit rates, testing is very much back in the mix. So in this moment, if you are curious about when you need to start thinking about testing, it has never been appropriate for juniors, for the most part, to be engaging in test prep in the fall of junior year. It's typically not curricularly appropriate. What you're doing in your English classes, your math classes this fall will be helpful for you with the test. But we also have some other reasons to wait now, depending on your learning profile. I don't want to put you through the stress and expense of testing and test prep if it ends up being optional for the schools you're thinking about. For all of you, there is the open question of, will you need to test based on your aspirations and what kind of ends up on your list? For the past few years, it's only been maybe 2/3 of the senior class that has had a test score, and maybe 1/3 of them have submitted it. That also means about 1/3 of the class has not engaged in testing at all, and it's been fine. We've had great results. I will also say that testing this fall or in the early winter is kind of a bad look right now because, and we'll get into this in a moment, there aren't a lot of testing seats available. This has been an issue in major urban areas, the Bay Area being sort of ground zero for it, but Seattle, New York City, they're also having testing issues as well. So my advice as of today on August 19th, 2024 is to please hold off on the testing question, on test prep, all of that. Stick with the usual JCHS schedule, which is for you to take the PSAT, as most of you probably did last year, during our school PSAT day. This year it's on October 9th. And then we have an optional, but I strongly suggest you do it, free practice ACT on Sunday, November 17th. And for the first time, we're going to be able to do that virtually as more of these tests are shifting to being online. Last year, the PSAT moved to being online for the first time. This year, this spring, the ACT is launching their virtual online ACT. So if you do both of these practice tests, PSAT in October, ACT in November. Then we will sit down together. We will look at the results of this sort of diagnostic testing. We will then be having our one-on-one conversations about what you're interested in, the schools you might be thinking about, what I'm recommending for you, and then whether or not I think testing is something that we need to commit to and keep going down the road, or whether it's something where we might kind of get off the testing bus altogether. All right. If you have more detailed questions about that or your particular circumstances, please just drop me an email or swing by my office, and I'm happy to chat because I know it's not always one size fits all. Okay, I'm so almost done with my content here. I'm just going to say a couple of other things about events. So as I mentioned, we've got the PSAT on October 9th. We've got the practice ACT on November 17th, and I will send more information about both of those things. And then our big college kickoff, which will also be here on Zoom virtually on December 4th. Again, I think probably 6:30 p.m., also recorded if for some reason you're at a practice or game or whatnot. And that's what you really need to know for college advising events for the first few months of the fall. If you are curious about anything with testing and want to take a deeper dive, I'm going to put in the chat a link to Compass Education Prep's webinars. So Compass is a great partner with JCHS. Yes, I see in the chat, it's October 9th is the PSAT, November 17th for the practice ACT. Compass will be running that practice ACT for us. Compass is a test prep group. They're not going to do a hard sell on using their services, but they are someone that JCHS families have worked with before. And they also are very knowledgeable about what's happening this second with standardized testing. So that link to those webinars, they do webinars once or twice a month. Some of them are just taking you through like what the digital SAT looks like, and some are more like state of the union on testing. So I highly recommend them for those free resources, just so if you feel like you want to know more about this and feel, sort of forewarned, then definitely sign up and go to one of their webinars. I'm also going to put in the chat another great resource for you. And I think I sent this out in a recent email. It is a link to the College Advising Handbook. 30 scintillating pages about how to tackle your college search. This may be too much for you to read at once, which is fine. You do not have to dive right into this tonight, but I would encourage you, just the first few pages have kind of a checklist and a timeline for each year at JCHS. So it would be good to at least look at the checklist for junior year and start looking to see what's coming this fall, what you want to stay on top of, and use that as a bit of a guidepost. You will get reminders, so many reminders from me. So also just know to keep an eye on your email. And anything from Lauren Cook is a must read. But if you are curious about setting up college visits, about how to do a college interview, about some of these pieces of the process, the handbook is a great place to start. You can just look at the index and go right to the page that you want to know more about. And then finally, for parents, especially if you haven't had a student go through the process before, there are two great books I would recommend thinking about getting. One is called The College Conversation. This is by the Dean of Admission at UPenn and someone who was the higher education writer for the New York Times for many years. A lot of good advice about thinking about the process generally and how to kind of come up with your college list and do research. And then another one, because college is very expensive, The Price You Pay for College. And this is by the New York Times personal finance columnist, who also has had kids go through the process. So he has had skin in the game with this now. And it is both some financial advice, but also thinking about what you're getting for what may be a hefty ticket price and how to think about your own priorities and where you want to put your money with this. So these two books I think can be really helpful, especially if you're new to this whole conversation. Finally, on the financial topic, we last year started partnering with College Money Method, which is really a man named Paul Martin, who is based in Miami, Florida, delightful human who knows all the things about all the things related to paying for college. And he does 6 workshops a year for a group of us in the Bay Area. It's a group of independent schools that have contracted with him, where we really found that having one financial aid night a year was not enough. This is a complicated process. So these 6 workshops are staggered and intended for audiences from 9th through 12th grades. The first one, and again, I'll send reminders and invites to this, but the first one that is directed specifically at 11th grade families is around evaluating loans and borrowing, and that will be in early December. I think it's December 9th. He also records these, and we have a school resource page specific for JCHS where he'll always post the videos afterwards. If you know nothing about the financial process and you didn't attend one of the Zooms he had last year, there will be a basic overview. It's geared towards 9th grade families, but anyone can pop in and just listen. The basic overview will be on November 19th at 6:30 p.m. So I've just given you a lot of information, dates, times. You do not have to memorize all of this. I'm very good about sending reminders and just sort of poking you about this process in bite-sized chunks. But I did want to give you a little bit of the landscape for what's coming just this fall. And now I would love to know what questions you might have. So you are welcome if you want to ask them live. Great. Just put your little Zoom hand up so we start getting a little cue, or you can pop something in the chat to me or to everyone, and I will do my best to field questions. Mr. Lowenstein, what is your question?
Hi.
Hi.
First of all, this is in bar not Mr. Lowenstein who has the question.
Okay.
First of all, thank you for this and for all of your keeping us and the kids in check, because I don't know what we would have done without you. My question is regarding the event, and I don't remember what it was called, but the event that they have in, I think it was a Catholic school where there was a stimulation. Simulation, sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
but that we just left Israel a few hours ago, so forgive me.
Okay. Yeah.
Where I felt that this was a great event and that I wish we had been able to attend an event like that more than once and possibly earlier. So if you can talk about that. And I'm talking about what we experienced with Tamara.
Right, right. So yeah, so there is often a case study program, meaning looking at college applications as cases for you to go through kind of a mock application process, a mock admission committee. I don't have the date yet for this year, and we are having a little trouble because it's so big. This is San Francisco independent schools that all come together to host this. So it is 10 independent schools, and it's a lot of people. It can be up to 1,000 folks. And so we're trying to find where that's going to be held this spring. But generally, there's a little road show that goes through the Bay Area. It's 5 nights. The first one is in San Francisco, and it's about 100 different college reps that come, and it's split into two parts. The first hour, hour and a half is small group meetings, and they separate students and parents. So you're with folks that might have similar questions, anxieties, et cetera. And you read through 4 common applications. This is the most standard way folks apply to college, that platform. And it's for fake kids really that are applying to a fake college, but you read through the applications together, you look at a description of the college and think about what kind of students might be the best fit for it, and you discuss as a group who you want to admit, who you might want to wait list, they're almost there, but don't get a full offer of admission, and who is going to have to be denied. And I think it can be really illuminating for families to see the depth of conversation that happens, draw attention to parts of the application that you might not be sure, why are they asking me this, and how it might be used in the process. And then the second half of the program is a college fair. And so all of those reps are in very large, sweaty gyms, but you can go ask them questions, sign up for more information, and figure out who might be the rep responsible for JCHS. So it can be a little overwhelming for some people because of the size and the content, but I think it also can be incredibly useful to get a little peek behind the curtain on things. So when I do have a date for it, hopefully in a location, I will certainly be letting everyone know with plenty of warning, because it often is somewhere drafting around Passover break, like right before or right after. So I want to make sure folks have it on their calendar. Thanks for that. And I think I have a question in the chat. Yes, if we want to visit schools this fall, winter, before you officially start meeting with us and helping students make lists, do you have guidance on how to decide what to look at? Yes. And is this described in the handbook? Absolutely. So my advice on doing visits is going to be similar to attending visits at JCHS. I would say start with just some types of schools because JCHS is very small. I have students say to me all the time, I want to go somewhere bigger. And that's really every college. There are no colleges as small as JCHS. So I think starting out by going to a UC campus, just go to Davis, go to Santa Cruz, go to Berkeley, something that's close, and see what a large public research institution looks like. Go someplace smaller. You could head to Santa Clara or USF. These are private, more suburban, mid-sized schools, 6,000, 7,000 or so students. See what that feels like to you. You could go out to St. Mary's College in Moraga and see what a small liberal arts college looks like. You don't have to be interested in any of these schools to have some reactions to it, that a UC feels too big or it feels perfect. You want to be on a bustling sidewalk feeling a little anonymous, right? To just start to get some sense of gut reactions to types of institutions. From there, I think then you can start thinking about location, a little bit more about how they might structure things in terms of majors and all of that. At this point in junior year, I think it's highly unlikely that folks know exactly what they want to do with their lives, and that's okay. You don't have to go on a campus visit saying like, I want to major in biology. Tell me about your biology program, because I guarantee your interests are going to ebb and flow and change over the next 2 years, and really while you're in college. So start with types of schools. And if you are going to a family wedding, someone's bar mitzvah, if you're on vacation at some point in the next year and a half, look and see what colleges are around that location, and if you want to hop on a campus or two. There is a section in the handbook about what to do with a campus visit. The most basic introduction that I think is the best way to start these is just signing up online for what is typically an info session and tour combo. So you might have a half an hour, 45-minute information session with someone from the admission office. Sometimes there's a student, a faculty member, somebody else in there. And then you're walking the campus and you're getting a guided tour. And the best ones are going to show you a classroom and you'll see the gym and you'll get to see where people eat. Some can be more real estate tours where they're just kind of pointing out buildings. But it's usually about a 2-hour commitment and then leave. That's plenty. Because if you do a couple of those, they will start to blur together a little bit. So you don't need to do like a whole deep dive, on that first pass. But there are some suggestions in the handbook about things to do on campus. If you want to go get a meal and see what the food is like, terrific. If you want to swing by Halal and find out what the vibe has been lately, that's certainly important to a lot of our students. But then it's really senior year, and especially once you're admitted to campuses, that you might want to try sitting in on a class, and doing like that kind of more in-depth assessment of the school. And then there's a whole list in the handbook. If you're going to be in Boston, couple of types of schools. These are some big schools, some medium-sized schools, some small schools, and then like an art school or a technological school, just some different school names and types about them in a variety of big metro areas. So, and if you do have some specific interests, I love it when someone wants to design roller coasters or, go into a video game storytelling or whatnot. And you want to send me an email and just say, I've got this really niche interest. Are there some schools, you would recommend for it? I'm happy to entertain those, but most folks are not in that place just yet, and that's fine. So we have another question in the chat, wondering how you recommend approaching learning about anti-Semitism. Yes, on various campuses and what schools are doing about it. Great question. Was just reading in the Chronicle of Higher Ed this morning how campuses are preparing for this, and are they preparing for this year based on last year's tactics, when it seems like there might be some different tactics with protests this fall. But I will say, I don't want to presume to know where each family is at and how they feel about what's happening on college campuses right now, because we do have the whole range in our community. But I do think you've got a couple of great resources. One would be Hillel's website, hillel.org. That is going to give you, first of all, just some basic information about if there is a Hillel that serves a campus. That can tell you something about the Jewish population generally. And they have lists of, the top schools that Jews choose. I love Jews choose, based on percentages, so how big is the population going to be? And then there's contact information. And so I think the best way to know what's happening in the moment on a college campus is call up the Hillel and just ask to talk to the director, a rabbi, one of the students that might, organize their Shabbat dinners or whatnot, and ask a couple of folks there for their perspective on things. We also have JCHS students that are so happy and energized to talk to you about this and give you some guidance, both on your search, on what you might think of their particular campus, and just things to know that maybe they didn't know or fully anticipate or feel prepared for as JCHS students. And then it is fair game to ask our reps when they come to campus what's happening at the start of the school year. I'm going to try and walk the line with them between getting some good discernible information about maybe if they had encampments last year, how their administration has approached, everyone's right for free expression, and attending class and feeling comfortable and all the rest, and what might feel like the third degree for reps, because obviously these individual reps are not setting policies for their campus. But I would start with Hillel. I would be in touch with me if you want some alumni names. And I'm watching and waiting, like everyone else, about how things will kind of unfold this year. But I will, as I have resources, send them out to you periodically. So this is a hot topic last spring for obvious reasons. Other questions? Had some good questions here. Wow, are we out already? That would be record time, which I'm not complaining about, but I just want to make sure anything that feels top of mind is addressed. I will see these students on Thursday at your class meeting. Rabbi Buchan and I are going to tag team and just talk a little bit about what's coming this year. And then I will hope to see many of you in college visits. And I'm always intrigued to see what your questions are and what you're interested in and how many you go to. And if I don't see you at some point, I may grab you in the hallway and just check in and see how it's going. All right. Very good. Well, I'm so glad that you logged on tonight. I hope this was helpful. Again, there'll be a recording coming out, but really check your inbox. That's where the latest and greatest will be coming from me. And enjoy the last, what do we got? 2 days of summer left, students. So enjoy those. And I'm excited for Thursday morning. I think it's going to be a great school year. So have a good night, everyone. Thanks for coming.